Sorry to those online, we were muted.
That's all right. No, we were just talking about report from the finance department, any questions? And then was there anything new in terms of filling a staff, open staff position?
So yeah, CFO recruitment. We have done an initial round of interviews, and we are scheduled for Tuesday to do another second round of interviews. I believe you're part of that. I don't know where the coordination is on all of this. But we are looking to schedule, or we've scheduled that next interview with the candidates that have moved forward. I think we were hoping that maybe we could pull off getting in that second interview before the holidays, and somehow we're able to get like 12 schedules aligned in order to make that happen on Tuesday, which is somewhat amazing. Apparently everybody's working right up to the holidays. So that's been good. So we will do that second interview, and then probably have a conversation with the chair here about maybe making having a special meeting of this committee. The intent is to have the chosen or maybe a couple of the finalists present in a mock type presentation to this committee as that final version of that. And we'd rather not wait until the end of January to do that. So we can have that conversation, but I think I came into it wondering if we would get 2 people to apply, and so we've actually gotten a pretty good number of candidates to be able to go through. So I've been kind of happy with that, and we've done that first round of interviews, and we're I think in a pretty good place. So
very good. Appreciate that. Any other questions? Finance? All right. Moving down, criminal justice collaboration. Again, a nice report with a lot of information. And Mr. Bauer.
Yeah, I was kind of curious on Project Hope. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, if you could, please.
Well, thank you for the question. Project Hope is a collaboration between Menominee City Police and our Sheriff's Office, and mainly funded through a combination of federal and state grants on both agencies' part to have law enforcement special trained as behavioral health officers. So our sheriff officer is Officer Dylan Christ, and the city's officer is Aaron Berg. And they're charged with really going out there into the community and helping to deflect people from the criminal justice system. We know that people that are having mental health challenges, aging challenges, substance use challenges, unhoused population, where they can have a higher risk of having interaction with law enforcement that leads to incarceration, being brought into jail. So just recently, in the past couple of months, both officers have a partner, a caseworker partner, and those positions are also grant funded. More of that social work type that helps support these individuals that they're encountering out in the community and get them connected with longer term services, whether that's human services, veteran services, aging and disability resource center services for those ongoing needs. So they have been very busy in interacting with people out in the community and helping them get connected with treatment or other services to the point where we've added on 2 additional staff. So there's teams that they have a collaborative team of 4 that are trying to do the work. And one of the surprising outcomes has really been the change of trust and impression of law enforcement. Previously, I would say, most people were a little bit guarded interacting with law enforcement, especially if they're struggling, knowing that historically that led to maybe being booked in jail and held in jail. But this approach really is, we're following our Wisconsin Deflection Initiative. So we have support on the state front to really do something different with people that are struggling. Our jail has a purpose and is serving that purpose. But people that are cycling through because they're unhoused, or they, are at the wrong place at the wrong time, or they're confused and they're knocking on the wrong door. These kind of things have historically led to a jail, or at least a booking, a criminal charge. So what has really transpired with Project Hope is kind of a different perspective of law enforcement and trust in a new way that has been entirely surprising and wonderful. So we are one of the state's pilot sites for the Deflection Initiative. We are partnering with Texas Christian University to do some research on the impact. We're one of 20 that's part of this national research project. And we're really hoping, we're just kind of baby steps getting started, but really hoping that over time we'll have some data and time to reflect on the impact of our behavioral health officers with Project Hope.
Yeah, I had a chance to work with Dylan, but excellent person. Kudos to him. He's doing a really good job with a mental ill person. But Dunn County really doesn't cover mental illness very well. They cover drugs and alcohol. I'm kind of hoping Dunn County can get into that a little more. I don't know.
That would be great, and you're right. There are limited services available when it comes to mental health, and people have also the option to take part in these, services or not. And sometimes the people that need it the most are more reluctant to take part. So part of what Dylan and Aaron and their caseworker partners are really trying to build that motivation for change, to get the support that they need to maybe take their mental health medications or take part in treatment, and whether that's inpatient or outpatient. But it's definitely challenging. And interestingly, we're seeing more of that aged population where maybe it's some dementia setting in, Alzheimer's setting in, but they're not qualifying for aging disability resources. So they're kind of they're caught in this gap in the systems. So these officers are really trying to close that gap.
Thank you.
Anything else for CJCC? Thank you, sir. Thank you much. All right. Treasurer, we have a written report from the treasurer in front of you. Any questions for our treasurer? Anything, Lynn, that you want to add?
Nothing too materialistic other than all the tax bills were mailed out last week on Friday. Our deadline by state statute was Monday, the 15th. So everything we were responsible for got done. Had a few little minor things that came up that caused us to have a little heartthrob yesterday, but we've worked through those issues. We thought we were going to have to reprint one of the municipalities, but it's an assessor issue that has to be corrected in the 2026 tax year. So we're excited, but we still have a lot of work to do. We just started collecting bills. It's really busy with the telephone, asking questions. Why are the values so high, or tax bills? So that's about it. We're just crazy busy.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Sheila.
just reading the back page, and it said software issue with SAP. Can you explain?
Oh, yeah. So the Old National and Bremer Bank conversion, like everything showed up where it was supposed to, but the whole electronic file import export thing has not been going very well with the bank into SAP. And this is, accounts payable, it's all the banking data. And so in our office, what I'm responsible for is we usually do a daily import. So all of the banking transactions that happen every single day, we bring into the system and they go into an account number. And then we reconcile it against the transactions that the department has done or the checks that have been issued. And that file hasn't been coming over properly. And so we've been working diligently. At the beginning, SAP was being very slow in responding to our requests to fix the files and work with Old National Bank. We got that initial process finalized. However, there's been some additional errors that really came up with that correction, and we're working through those. My bank imports, as soon as we get that all fixed, and our office will be really busy reconciling, but right now we're a ways behind. When we start doing, there is supposed to be an errors file. However, so then that's when we start doing it. And then when we reconcile, when they're not where they're supposed to be, there's a special account number. Like if there's an outgoing ACH, that reflects in a certain account number when it comes in from the bank, or if it's outgoing, or if it's a check, they all have a code. And so when we go to our account number to reconcile that against the SAP, the stuff that we entered, and there's nothing there, that's how we determined it. So,
Have they given you an indication on when this is going to be resolved?
well, this current issue, he's been working with us daily now. I think his response time has been much better. So it's just a matter of you fix one thing and then you test it and then you find that there's another thing, because you can't do step 3 before step 1 is done.
Okay.
So
Thank you. I guess considering what we just went through, I guess I'm wondering, is this happening in any other departments?
Well, the errors that she has, only the treasurer would be doing that work. So that's
Okay.
kind of that checks and balances to make sure that all of the money is accounted for. So being able to check your bank records versus our financial system records. And
So do you have concerns?
no, I mean, I know the work is getting done. It's just not as efficient as it we would all like it to be, which has kind of been the ongoing story of SAP. So I think that you ask, when do we expect that to be resolved on like March 2nd when we migrate to a different system. So
read my mind.
yeah. So
yeah.
Thank you.
And as a follow-up, the daily transactions, we're able to access the data, and I've been able to communicate with the departments. For instance, the ACH deposits, those are some that the departments are not aware of until they show up in the bank. I can still go get that data. I'm sending out the emails to the departments. They can do their SAP deposit transactions in SAP, so that eventually when we just have to match them up so that they say reconciled in the system, that's the piece that is behind.
Do you have enough staff to do all this considering what you're going through?
Well, we'll be working a little extra, Angela and I, for sure.
Well, I am sure that the county manager will have some special something for you guys when you're done.
Well, and we have had communications with the finance department. I mean, if we get to a point where we're feeling comfortable that, hey, we can get this going, and if they have staff available, I mean, we've worked through our busy times before, and we've talked about a process that we could make that work. But right now, sometimes it's just harder to train somebody else to do what you're doing, because just work on it and get it done. And that's kind of probably what we will do, but yep.
yeah, and I would say, part of what you're talking about here really is that separation of duties, and what distinguishes the position of the treasurer as the elected official that is elected by the people to make sure that we the employees are managing the money and doing that. So it's really that accountability. So that's like we can help, but we're kind of stepping over that separation of duties line when we start getting into that in those areas.
Anything else?
Oh, thank you and good luck.
Thank-
I've had many dealings with that switch over and everything it seems that I've touched. And it hasn't gone well yet. So good luck. Thank you. All right, IT department, again, we had a good written report, a lot of updates. Part of that report was the action we took at our last special meeting to make an early procurement of some hardware that was going to be purchased as part of this 2026. So any questions about that? That was mentioned in the report. Right. Well, land information. Anything for land information? Again, a lot of work this time of year for land information. Okay. Corp Council. Anything for Jim? Mr. Bauer.
Research the draft speed limit. I mean, ordinance. Does the county need an ordinance for, doesn't the state statutes take care of a lot of that or not?
It does. This is actually at the request of Dustin because he was unsure. Oh, I'm going to try to be careful the way I word this. He's unsure if some of our speed limit signs are compliant with state statutes. So
Oh, the
he's
signs.
I have one of my employees working on that just to make sure that everything's on the up and up.
Okay. And one other question is kind of a comical one.
Oh, no, I just missed the Eau Claire.
No. You know, interpreters have an app that they can change language from Spanish to English and it's back, and you're doing research for language for animals. How are you gonna research animal?
Where is that on here? I just want to make sure I'm remembering the right thing.
You're on page 15 of the thing and almost the very last line where you get into contract review. It's under ordinance project.
That is actually a very specific ordinance that we have animals allowed at the county fair. And I think that needs to be updated because it's not compliant with the law, frankly. I mean, I just want to update it. I've seen cases before where even if a law or an ordinance isn't enforced, somebody will find a way to sue for it just based on it being not quite fully legal under the plain language. And so I just want to clean that up at some
Okay,
point.
I didn't know
I
if you're
promise
talking
I'm
to
not
them or-
dropping anything
yeah.
else to do it. It's kind of, I'm doing it on the side, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Corp Council? Okay, thank you, Jim. All right, county clerk. Anything county clerk's report? Okay, Lon, human resources. Probably a lot of questions for human resources. We can defer that on to the action items if you wish. All right, we'll do that. Okay, consideration action to be taken by this committee. Approval of vouchers. We have vouchers for October 1st through November 30th. There was 2 full sets there. Any questions and concerns? Otherwise, we could get a motion so we could address.
I'll make a motion to approve both months of vouchers.
Okay, do it both months. That's fine. Second? Ann wants to second that. All right. Okay. Motion been made. Clarifying questions? All right.
Under 2,100 on the first set of vouchers, under water and land. Oh, I'm sorry, under surveyor. The 1243, it's under twice. I was just wondering under UW non-payroll, that wouldn't be a double bill, would it? Or is that 2 separate billings? Page 33, I guess on.
I will have to look into that and get back to you. I would assume it's not, but
Identical.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what they pay UW system for.
Yeah.
Okay. Michelle?
Question on page 23, under 1110, ERP capital project for BSNA software is listed under miscellaneous general. Just wondering if that should be under something more software-ish than miscellaneous.
I would argue, yes, it should be.
Yeah.
And I would point out that that's one of the things we're really hoping to fix with our next chart of accounts, and that our next chart of accounts will not have miscellaneous options or other options. They're not there. And that's actually some of the work as we go through the chart of accounts, is asking people that use miscellaneous and other, what is this? So, yeah, I think we can probably get a correction there. Maintenance and contracts would be the one that we would typically use it for.
Ann?
I had a quick question. Thank you. On page 34, the heat and light for the Judicial Center, 5101, seems much higher than than November. It was 31,000. Did we accumulate some months?
We'll look into that. I noticed that one being high as well. I do know that we would have had a transition amongst the finance person
Oh.
in facilities at that time.
Okay.
So I think it does kind of point towards maybe a 2-month payment there, but I'll verify and report that back.
Okay, thanks.
Any other clarifying questions? Somebody can.
I had one more.
Go ahead.
So Amazon Capital Services is all throughout, or is that just random things we're getting from Amazon for office supplies and stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess so you don't necessarily see some of those details. I think this is something that we'll also look at. Well, actually, there's levels of that, but I think we're looking at improving that a little bit. But the Amazon process actually does have kind of a great approval process throughout the county, that when an employee does that, it goes to their manager to get an approval before it goes through and to get that. And it's actually a lot better than we have in our typical purchasing process. So, yeah.
Anything else? All right. Uh, ready to vote? Would you like to vote on both sets? All right, that is our motion. All in favor of approval of October 1st to the end of November vouchers? Aye. Aye. Okay, unanimous passes. Thank you all. Approval of an amended full-time equivalency allocations. And this is in the form of a report and presentation from our Human Resource Department. Someone care to make a motion? Okay. Motion by Michelle, or I'm sorry, Sheila, and then Michelle. All right. Okay, clarifying questions or clarifying information? Would you like to hear from our Human Resource Department? All right. You want to sit down? That's fine. We can see you.
Well, thank you. So you'll see there are 3 different action items as it pertains to these proposed organizational structures. It is the bulk of the changes are proposed to align with the restructuring of our finance division, which Dan has been kind of introducing the last few months. He had mentioned working on those changes, and I think if the committee is on board, I think the easiest way to kind of explain what we're looking to do would be to direct your attention to the org charts that I've included. I tend to follow things better if there's a visual. And I
Can I-
can share my screen.
Sneak in just a second, because as we go through these three resolutions, if you remember, we changed the ordinance and we passed a whole bunch of policies. So these are some changes that we're making kind of the first time under that new policy. So welcoming any feedback to how these reports are provided to you and whether and the types of information that you want, as this was Jenna's first go at putting that out, but kind of a new process.
Yeah, for me, it worked well. I guess I went through the written narrative and then down to the charts to kind of, I guess, look at the path that where things are actually gonna end up.
Mhm.
Any, is that all right with you? We'll just go right to the charts?
And
All right.
okay, great. And I think just to go along with that, what Dan is saying, the county, under the previous Chapter 3 Personnel Code, we did not have any real requirement to be tracking FTEs. FTE is full-time equivalency. Think of that as the amount of staff that is allocated to a certain position. So with the new ordinance change that was approved in the fall, we are now tracking this. And any changes to those approved FTE allocations can be approved by the Committee on Administration. So it was not previously tracked. So we're tracking it now, and then this committee is able to make any final decisions on that. So I will start with on page 54. I have it up here on the screen too. I know it's a little small. This is just what our finance division looks like currently. So you'll see there are a total of 17.4 regular FTE working within the finance division. If we move forward to the next page, I tried to illustrate exactly where we're making the changes and highlight and bold kind of what's going on. So I will start with the changes being proposed to move FTE out of the finance division into the neighbors of Dunn County. And with that, we are proposing to move one FTE of a medical claims specialist and 2 FTE for medical billers. Additionally, 1 FTE of what is currently a lead specialist in accounting. And again, removing those from the finance division and transferring them to the neighbors of Dunn County. I'm going to kind of skip down here to the neighbors. So this is page 59. So removing those FTE from finance, and then you see them here. I'm struggling to scroll over. Here underneath the community mentor, which we are proposing to update that title as one business office manager. We will be talking about proposing that title within the next action item. And then here is that 1.0 for medical claims specialist and the 2.0 for medical biller. Any questions on the changes within the neighbors? Okay, I will note, and it's going to be hard to not kind of cross over into the title discussion because it's all really related, but I see it as 3 different action items, right? But the business office manager, it's currently in finance a lead specialist. That position is not responsible for managing people, but with this change of them leaving the finance division and moving to the neighbors, we would propose for that to be a management position to oversee the medical claims specialist and the billers. This is because adding one additional FTE for Carmen to have oversight of is different than adding 4 additional FTE. So we do feel it's necessary for that role to have management responsibilities with that change. All right, so I'm going to go back up to the finance changes here. As part of this restructure, there are also proposed positions to move out of the finance division to the highway department, and those are highlighted here in yellow. We have 1 accounting manager and what is currently 2 full-time accounting specialists. And I have a note here that 0.3 of one of the existing accounting specialists is intended to be a temporary increase in FTE due to the ERP replacement project. So in total, 3.0 FTE moving to the highway department. And I'm just going to bring you there and see what that looks like. So that would include an accounting manager moving out of finance, becoming a business manager, reporting directly to the highway commissioner, and then 2 accounting specialists reporting directly to the business manager. And I will note all of those roles are have current incumbents. And there really aren't a whole lot of changes in duties associated with that move. It is intended to increase efficiencies and allowing the highway commissioner to have direct, decision making and more aligned financial and program decisions.
Question.
Absolutely.
With this, the highway and the neighbors, are they all going to physically move to the other buildings as well?
I will note the highway staff currently, it's Joy, Carrie, and Brenda. They already work over at the highway office.
Okay.
The staff that will be moving to the neighbors, they currently work here at the government center, but they would be moving to the neighbors with this change. Okay, so I'm going to go kind of back to my home base here. We are also proposing, following the transfers of the highway and the neighbors staff out of finance, kind of restructuring with like what's left of finance. And we'll talk more about proposing the new job titles of purchasing agent and grant coordinator, as well as administrative associate. So the final results would be with all of these changes for the finance division to go from 17.4 total regular FTE, and the end result being 11 regular FTE with 1 temporary for the ERP project. There's one more change I'd like to explain if I can.
Okay.
Yep. So, and this isn't necessarily related specifically to the restructuring of finance, but with the resignation of a previous incumbent that was the administrative specialist in facilities, there was a review kind of done of what facilities needs in that role, and then also interest from our current accounting specialist who sits at our front desk in administration. There was an interest expressed by her to move to the facilities role, staying in a part-time capacity, because she had recognized the need for full-time work in that role. She's currently a 0.7. She wants to continue being a 0.7. And so there were, collaborative discussions with the facilities Transit and Parks Director, as well as Assistant Finance Director and Dan, and looking to propose shifting 0.3 of the FTE of admin specialist in facilities down to a 0.7, and then that would result in 1.0 FTE for what is currently the position that sits at our front desk in administration. I will note too, because we needed to review, okay, what's this going to look like as far as duties and responsibilities with a full-time role? In looking at that, it was really not going to fit within what is currently called as an accounting specialist. It was really not an admin specialist. It was something in between. And so this is where administrative associate is born. And so that is the reason for the recommended title. The pay grade placement would be sandwiched right in between an administrative specialist and an accounting specialist. So really felt that it was important to have a distinct title. It's really a blend of fiscal and administrative functions, but not quite rising to the level of accounting specialist. Okay, that was a lot. But I believe that covers the bulk, the FTE changes.
Yeah,
Ma'am? I'm sorry.
oh, you can ask a question.
First.
I had a question if with the org chart numbers, because it looks like we moved like 7 FTE out of finance, but we still have 11 and we had 17. So, but it all washed out in the in the narrative, but I'm just wondering if those numbers. Oh, you can explain it?
I know the reason.
Oh. Then that-
And yeah, I can't remember if it was in the, yeah, so first one they had somebody. So the first one, that first slide that has the 17.4 does not reflect, I believe, the vacant.
It does
Oh.
reflect, it's here.
Oh.
Sorry, thank you for pointing that out.
Okay.
Currently, there are 3, so this is in the report, but
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah,
scroll up to the report.
that was
here.
so I think I'd have to do the math on the chart, but I think if you do the math on the chart, you will actually find 18.4. At one point, that vacant position was missing, and I think we added the vacant position, but didn't add to the total, or is it right?
No, it should be right. So yeah, is currently there is a vacant accounting specialist position that was held, did not get filled with the intention of being able to create this purchasing agent position and not increase FTE. So thank you for pointing that out. I had meant to, and I believe I did in the report, so that is important to say out loud. Yep. Oh, that's an important thing to note for sure.
Okay, yeah.
I was just going to, as we went through this, I know we had talked in the past about the reorg, including human services, and you'll see that human services is not included in this, and you'll also see some medical biller and medical specialist positions that are remaining in finance. So as we continue to go through and identify what roles are moving and who's going to do what, we haven't really been able to fully iron out what's going to fall where. So we're put a pause on that a little bit. There's a lot of this project or this reorg, and even with the title changes, that we're looking at what the next ERP will look like and what the role of individuals are. So like even as you look at that administrative associate, and we talked about that position not necessarily being rising to the level of that accounting role. And that's because we feel like we're with the new ERP, less people will have hands-on accounting work and be doing more administrative type functions. And so a lot of that, as we look at that, is the the vision of what the new ERP looks like. But we don't know for sure, and we won't know until we get into that system and start implementing the new processes. And I think that's where we kind of ran with DHS was as we looked through some of those areas, we believe once we get the new ERP done, this person will have some more time in order to do this, or this person will be able to do this, and this role will be done by this other person, and that'll free up some time to do this. But that's all a belief right now. So we've decided to kind of hold on to that before we make that change with human services to see what the reality of that new system looks like, and then we'll be able to pivot from there in order to get those changes. As it related to neighbors of Dunn County and Highway, this structure pretty much has already existed. They just didn't report to those people, and they weren't, and in the case of the neighbors people, they weren't physically located there. So that was an easier change. So DHS is paused. However, the individuals that we've talked about from the DHS are going to be physically moving. So there will be 4 employees that will be moving from the admin suite down to human services and be a little bit more closely ingrained with the operations, but the reporting lines and duties aren't going to be changing.
Well, I'm trying to wrap myself around it because of course we had a system and then we changed the system. And I'm wondering about how much of the old system is back again, or if there's a big portion of it. And then, of course, we had our financial software, and that was also incorporated in, and then our financial policies were also changed. So I'm a little confused. But it appears to me that we're going back to very much what it was like before, with some additions on, if from what you just said a little bit ago, on who's responsible for reporting to who. And is that basically how to simplify it?
Reporting wise, I'd say I wasn't here before that, but my understanding is very much we are moving back to the way it was before. I think one of the changes that had happened as that organization, or as that last reorganization happened, there was my belief is that the intent was if we take all of these people and have them report to the finance director, then they will all do everything the same way. And so it was an intent to get some consistency in how we do our financial work. I think as that played out over multiple years, that was not true. And in addition, what we did is we pulled some of that financial knowledge, or that financial person out of the operations, and they lost track of that component of the service that they're providing. I would say to the detriment of their ability to kind of carry out that mission. So that's where putting that back is to help some of that. And the new ERP and the procedures that are going to put in place are what is going to give us that consistency, that people will not be able to do things however they want. You're going to have to follow specific steps in order to request a journal entry change, or to do a purchase, or as you can see, there's a purchasing agent position, and accounts payable, accounts receivable are going to have defined processes, and the centralized finance people are going to be the oversight to make sure that those policies are being followed before we start entering that information into our financial system in order to provide us that.
Was a lot of those changes that were being proposed and implemented as a result of the problems we were having with the financial system and trying to make that work?
The problems in the past, I think there's a combination. I think there's a little bit of it because of the financial system, but I also think that there was just not controls in place to make sure that things were being done in a consistent manner. But then Because we've had a lot of conversations about what the financial side has looked like, but there's been a lot of turnover within management in the finance department over the, 9 years that we've had SAP. I don't think we ever found a consistent level of process and procedure.
Because they each had their own way of wanting to do things from where they.
Yeah, and as new people came in, they learned from one person and they continued that practice. This person learned from another one. And that was something that really came to light as we did the ERP and we started to put the groups together to say, how do you do this? And you grab 6 people that have been working here for 10 years and they all did the same thing a different way. And went, and at that point, it was very clear what the problem was, right? Is first of all, there's too many ways to do it, and we just didn't have the controls to be able to do that.
I think it's clear.
So,
now. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, we have a motion to approve those FTE changes. Any other questions? Going once?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Yep. 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 All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes. Okay, we can,
Thank you.
yeah, a lot of work. B,
you.
or C, I'm sorry. Approval of the new and amended job titles. And again, this is something that we just kind of touched on and now we can dig in.
Mhm.
All right. Okay. Okay. All right. Motion by Sheila, seconded by Michelle for approval of the new amended job titles. Clarifying questions? Or clarifying information from staff?
We can walk through them one by one if you would like. But it is hopefully pretty well covered in the report, so.
All right.
I think you
Yeah,
have
you
it
did a good
very
job.
clearly laid out.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That was a good job.
Thank you.
Everything kind of blended together. All right. Our last item, approval of pay grade placements and amendments. And again, the work that's been done has now we have to settle on who is going to be, he deserves to get paid what. All right, motion on that. Okay, Mr. Bauer moves. Seconded by Michelle. All right, would you like some clarifying information on that? All right. If you would, please.
Yes, okay. If you're okay with it, I think we could start with the changes within the neighbors. And I tried to do a similar thing here and mark up the wage structure here with the changes going on. And so with moving medical billers to the neighbors, I'll back up a little bit. Neighbors has a separate wage structure. So needing to create a medical biller within the neighbor's pay structure. The placement for that role is recommended in grade I. That is most consistent with the pay range that they are currently at on the general county structure. So that's the first change here and adding that. I failed to highlight medical claims specialist, so I apologize for that, but also adding medical claims specialist and placing in grade J. I will note that in placing those 2 positions, we reviewed the human resources associate role that has been at the neighbors for 30 years. It's
Yeah, it got adjusted probably to change the title.
sure. Hasn't always been that title, but it's Chris Anderson at the neighbors. That's the role there. And in comparing the responsibilities of that role in comparison to the new ones, we are recommending to adjust the pay range from grade J to grade K for the human resources associate role. I think it's pretty common that when we're trying to fit new things onto a pay scale, that we review adjacent positions to see kind of how that progression goes. And as a result, that is one of the changes that we are recommending to an existing position. I will note when, while we're recommending a changing grade, that doesn't necessarily mean that the individual's pay rate will be increasing drastically. Their pay range will simply fall within the new range, right? So they're somewhere in between 25 and 33, and they'll be somewhere in between 27 and 35. So there isn't a budget impact anticipated with this change or any others. The next change with the registered nurse, similar recommended move in reviewing how things fit. We are recommending 1 grade increase for that role. I'll also add I would say for at least 5 years now, it's been challenging to hire registered nurses, and more often than not, we are having to start them in the middle of the scale in order to get them here. And so that's an indication that our wage range is a little below average. And so adjusting that pay range is meant to allow recruitment efforts to go a little bit more smoothly. The other new role being added here is that business office manager position, needing to place that and recommending at a grade O. All of the other titles within this were previously in grade O, and so with recommending registered nurses to move up, wanting to keep that distinction in the roles within like culinary director, life enhancement director, those having managerial duties and requiring a higher level of education and responsibility as opposed to registered nurse. So trying to keep that hierarchy there. The other changes, so assistant clinical mentor, that's really just a title change to facility director of nursing, which was already approved. So just updating those titles here subsequently to the title change approvals. Any questions on these changes here within the neighbors? Okay, thank you. All right. It's proposed as one action item. So I'll move on to the general county with proposed title changes and additions. We see administrative associate here placed at grade G. I explained it's right in between an admin specialist and an accounting specialist role. So that is the recommendation there. And then these two changes, GIS specialist, grant coordinator, those are just placing the new titles within the appropriate pay grade. Purchasing agent. So that is a new title, and having that position reviewed and comparing for market, because it is a fairly common type of role. It is recommended for that to be placed at grade M. And I think of that as really like the compliance officer of all purchasing, making sure the ordinances and statutes are all followed, and that there are policies put in place and monitored for all purchasing functions at the county. Is really something that came up as part of the ERP discussion as well as a need, just to make sure that there's a consistency across the county in those functions. Business manager, this is a new title. Just looking to get it added within the same pay grade that that individual is currently being compensated at. And then an unrelated change to, this whole restructure is the recommendation to move the medical examiner grade from O to grade P. This was lifted up as something that was needing review, kind of looking at adjacent counties. Also in having a unique arrangement with Eau Claire County and Dunn County. So our medical examiner covers both. And just given the scope of that responsibility, really, I'm going to say around the clock, needing to keep things running in that way, we are recommending to move up one pay grade. We think that that fits better in comparison with the other positions currently on grade P when we do that comparison. And it also, I don't look forward to the day that our medical examiner retires, but there will likely be a time that we have to recruit for this, and wanting to ensure that we're able to recruit somebody that's qualified and willing to fill those shoes. And that is all for the general county wage schedule. Any questions?
On Jenna, and that is with all these changes, and I think I know the answer, but I just think I should ask it. Even though we're going down positions, there's some benefit changes that may occur with some of these. Is it going to change our budget?
So
Some of these pay grades, is there some different positions with regards to medical insurance coverage or any of those kinds of things that's going to affect other than just pay grade changes?
I would say that the biggest potential budget impact to those, as we talk about moving somebody from one range to the other, to like a higher range and not changing their pay, we do raise the ceiling, right? So that is giving them more potential over time to get there. They're not at that point right now. With the exception of the medical examiner, that who's already at the max, right? So not able to get more, moving her to a different pay range actually opens up that ability to gain additional pay on an annual basis. That would be, I think, to me, the biggest budget impact to the changes that are happening here.
Okay.
Other than that, it's really, I think, really around making sure that we have those positions in the right grade so that as we go through recruitment processes, we're really able to hire people and recruit those positions at the right level. So anytime we kind of go through that, and I think Jenna brought that up, there's a few additional changes in there that happened out of pure, well, if we move this one, like, where's this one? Why is this one here? And we hear those also from department heads of, why is this position at this grade? And so we have to do those evaluations. So we can do those total compensation studies, but these are kind of the one-off, like, that one's not right. Let's go do that evaluation. So we go through, work with a consultant and go through a whole process to identify whether that's in the right spot or whether it needs to be moved.
I did see that charge on the vouchers too, if you're interested.
All right, any other questions? All right. More discussion? Okay, all in favor of the proposed pay grade placements and amendments? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes. Thank you, Jenna. Appreciate that. All right, if you're looking on your agenda, our next consideration of reports, resolutions, and ordinances to the county board coming from this committee would be an amendment to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 7, financial management. And again, that was included in your packet. Someone make a motion. All right. Motion made by Sheila, seconded by Mr. Bauer. Okay, any questions or clarifying information you wish to hear? Again, that's spelling out basically reimbursement for travel and meals. I liked it. I think it simplifies a lot of that. And you know, if you skip lunch and want to use the money for a nicer supper or whatever, you can do that without having to, you know, I don't know, it just personally fits some people's personality, especially traveling and attending meetings. So, any questions? Huh?
I've got a
Yes,
question.
okay.
In the new proposal, I don't know if it's quite as clear. Because it mentions like for every 24 hours, you should be reimbursed for such and such. But before, like single day trips are different because they're taxable. I don't know that that part is as clear. Calling out the difference between a single day trip versus an overnight trip, because there is a bit of difference there.
So I think it's intended to be covered in 2A around the eligibility that reimbursement is allowed only when an employee is in travel B. Reimbursement shall not be made from meals.
I mean, yeah, it says travel status, but then
Yeah.
do we need to differentiate same day travel status versus overnight travel status? And would same day travel still receive the same amount, just at that reduced however many meals they would be? Because it still would be it would be taxable versus the non-taxable.
So we do not allow. We don't currently reimburse for taxable meals.
So there's somebody on a same day trip, say, goes to Madison for a 1 day trip, doesn't get a provided meal, does not get a reimbursement.
That is correct. That is the current practice.
Maybe we should.
I'm thinking that it has happened before because when you write down on your stipend, you know, any other, you might put down that meal that you had to buy for that day trip that you were down in Madison. And you would get reimbursed for it. Not necessarily the tax, but I mean, the meal, you'd usually
Yeah.
round it up or down, but it seems
Yeah.
to me that it did occur.
I mean, we would have to look at it and we can make adjustments. That isn't in the current ordinance. And so I believe the way that works right now is reimbursement would be, I think it's 50% is all that's allowed by the IRS. So as Supervisor Prashant brings this up, if you're not traveling overnight and staying somewhere, it doesn't necessarily say overnight. There's some rules, but essentially if you didn't rent a hotel room, we cannot provide you a meal or it is taxable. That's the IRS's rule. But there is, if you don't do that and we provide you a meal, there's ways that you can be reimbursed, but it is taxable. And our financial system then has to be set up in order to remove that tax from a person's pay. in order to do that. And that's what currently I think doesn't exist within our system in order to do that. So,
I just know with other places I've worked, they had a flat rate for, a single day trip was maybe like $15, so not going off of the per diem rate. Just having like a flat rate, like if you're gonna be traveling for one day, you have to have a meal, it's not provided. You get X amount for the day maximum.
Yeah.
Which would be a lot less than the overnight trip.
um, I think that makes sense. I think that's something we can work on. I don't want to make promises because we are implementing a new financial system that already, so that's part of the timing of this particular ordinance is as we had to come up with that, how are we going to do that reimbursement, which this greatly simplifies the implementation of that reimbursement process on that. But I think that's something that we can implement, but I'd rather look at maybe doing that towards maybe the end of next year, once we've had a little bit of time in the new system, if that's
Well,
makes sense.
would it be covered under the current time frame is before 2:30, 10:30 and after 2:30? And then there is a spelled out amount of $12 for lunch. That's staying in?
Yeah, but it has to be for 24. You have to be out for 24 hours. So this would be, I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I drove to Madison. I went to a meeting. The meeting ended at 6 o'clock at night and I got home at
There's
8.
a chart here. That says how do you to be eligible? I just saw it. Yeah, yeah.
So that's true, but you still have to be gone for 24 hours for any of those to apply.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay,
It's
okay.
for A,
All
it's the
right.
bottom of page
All
73.
right, so I'm
Yeah.
interpreting that wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be if
That's what
you,
you're saying, is it? Yeah, it isn't really.
yeah,
there.
if you,
Yeah.
yeah, if you leave before 10:30 AM and then you get back the next day before 2:30, you're not claiming all the meals both days.
So, and that's where I think, yeah, and we can look at that 24-hour period that was from the previous one, which once again, it isn't necessarily a requirement that there's a 24-hour period. It's really an overnight stay, I believe, is more of the IRA. I don't even, it isn't even that. But I know the interpretation has been, so if you're a over the road driver, they actually say, like, if you're driving and you need to rest because you've been driving for 10 hours and so you pull to a parking lot and sleep for 6 hours, that does not make you, that would not be considered an overnight stay. If you rent a hotel room for 6 hours, it does
It
count.
does.
So that's the IRS's
That's our
guidance on
interpretation
that,
of
right?
making it allowable.
Yeah.
Where I see the
so-
potential for abuse here is that you put it on your stipend and you put it down. Well, who's going to question it unless they invite you in and say, okay, when did you leave and when did you get home? So somebody would put that down and maybe they shouldn't have put it down.
Yeah, so that would be a requirement to provide that documentation of like when you left, when you needed to be there, essentially like when's that check-in to your hotel and all of that. So
Put a copy of the agenda or something like
Right.
that, maybe along
Yeah.
with it.
and that's I think another piece. And yeah, I kind of hesitated in putting the times in there. Although it was feedback from the department heads as we were doing that to kind of have that defined rule. But yeah, so now if you leave before 10:30, you're eligible for lunch. Guess who's leaving at 10:29,
Mhm.
right? So I mean, you do kind of enable a little bit of
Yeah.
that to happen. But I think it's,
Hopefully not too much.
in helping to clarify the rules of when it does apply. And in some cases, I think one of the things that we've identified, and talk about budget impacts, but is we know that many employees do not submit for reimbursement because of the complexity and
Mhm.
not being able to understand our current system. So
Mm.
that will cost us more But, but I also think that, you know, it is, people are entitled to these types of reimbursements.
And I'll note too, it's under 2D, like requiring for there to be a conference agenda brochure attached. So I know that doesn't tell the full story, right? Like I could leave at 3 a.m. and come back and not stay overnight, but I think that's the reason for the timeframes to be identified, because like what if I did choose to leave at 4 a.m. instead of staying overnight? I've done that
Well,
before.
hopefully we've got a 99%
Yeah.
honest rate
Yeah.
of people doing what they should be doing, so.
Any other questions? This one we're passing on to, does this go to the board? Okay. Right, so we have a motion. A second. All in favor of passing this forward to the board for approval? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Takes care of item 7A.
And I'll, in taking your guidance there, I think as we do look at some of that all day, full day travel and looking at that in the future, we'll also look at doing maybe a little bit of that clarification around the 24 hours and what truly makes that. And my initial thought there is just having a line in there that just says, essentially reverting back to the IRS's rule, which is what the P card policy actually says, is like, if it's taxable, it's taxable. If it's not, it's not.
But what you could do is also on the stipend form, be sure you include your agenda or something. So it's a reminder, because not everybody's gonna always remember all those little things that are,
Yeah,
you know.
so that'll be the fun part, is the implementation of this, and the new most hated person in the county that starts telling people, oh, you got to provide that attachment too. So.
Thank you for all the explanations and all the hard work. Next meeting date is going to be January 23rd. Scheduled time would be here at 3 o'clock. Is that the?
Do we pick the wrong day?
Oh. Oh, 22nd? Okay,
Yeah.
All right. I will amend that statement.
And then I would kind of remind that we are probably going to be reaching out, if you can try and keep a little eye on it over the holidays, that we probably would be looking to schedule somewhat of a special meeting for that last step, probably early January.
Is this a good time? For instance, a Thursday or a certain day, if we couldn't meet at 3 o'clock? You know? Depends on the day. Okay,
You're right.
yeah. All right.
What's that? What? What? Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, we'll just
Yep.
do that. Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your inputs and hard work. Merry Christmas to all, if I don't see you before.
Talk to you